Well, hello once again from David de Lima. And the news this week is the trial happening here in Australia. It's concerning a police officer who tasered a 96-year-old frail woman in the nursing home. She was armed with a knife and wouldn't put the weapon down, and we'll wait to see the outcome of that trial. It's sub judice, so I make no comment about it in particular, but I will say a few words about the historic role of police that I think we greatly need to restore. So back in the day, London became the first great metropolis, certainly in the western part of the world. As a result of the Industrial Revolution, people were pouring into the city, not finding work, turning to crime, and the problem of breaking the law was just going off the page. But instead of a military crackdown, Sir Robert Peel, that great Christian statesman, applied his gospel-based thinking and said what we need is community enrichment. And so the modern police service, not force, was created, and the officers would be gentlemen dressed like any other gentleman at the time. Yes, they were armed with a truncheon, but it was hidden, and they would live and work in the same area. Now today, you never see the same police officer twice in the big cities because they're always on the move. But back in the day, they were to live and work in the same area. So literally they were bobbies on the beat, shall we say, in the local area. They would know the families, they would know the kids, they would encourage the kids, admonish the kids, and gain enormous respect. And by enriching the community in that way, they would tackle the problem of crime, nipping it in the bud. Now today, unfortunately, our police officers present as warriors, with the sidearm, the taser, the baton, the cuffs, the mace, the menacing, very dark blue uniform. And what we need is a restoration of community policing to bring back the gospel to the work of the police. Many of them, of course, make a promise to God to keep the King's peace. And even for those who don't, the King's peace is the peace which comes from faith, because King Charles and all of his predecessors were crowned in Christian ceremonies. So to keep the King's peace really is to connect with him who has made promises to serve God. So there's kind of no escape. And indeed, on both shoulders, cap and badge, we see the cross of Christ on the police badge, just to reinforce the point. Now, it's very important for the police to recognize that their most important weapon is not the taser or the gun or the baton, but it is the voice of calm reason, the voice of authority, yes, but the voice of peace, to break up scuffles, to intervene. And the challenge is for the police really to draw the weapon only as the last resort. Back in the day, our police, certainly here in South Australia, had the sidearm hidden in the trousers, so it wasn't on display, but it was available if push came to shove, so to speak. So we need to restore a recognition of the power of the voice. Scripture says the voice has the power of life and death, and so we need to recognize how useful it can be. But really what's required prior to that is this notion of relationships, community enrichment, because if the police officer is to be believed when he's told that they've had enough now and it's time to break up and go home and disperse, then there's got to be that relationship of respect. So you see the value of having bobbies on the beat, the value of the police officer living and working in the same area. Now, what is to be done? Well, as Christians, we can reclaim the gospel basis of the police service by recognizing the history and encouraging the graduates as they emerge from the academy as to what is the historic basis of their noble calling. And we know indeed that certainly here in South Australia, it's very difficult to find people who are prepared to join the police, and little wonder, because every day could be their last. There aren't too many professions where you could say that. But our police are spat upon, they're cursed and abused, and sometimes they have to give their lives in the line of duty. So we should, as God's people, be very much encouraging our police officers, encouraging young people to aspire towards careers in the police, And we need to make sure that we are enriching those that we would expect to enrich the community, to refresh them. They have a difficult task. A policeman's lot is not a happy one, as the old saying goes. In America many years ago, and I'm not sure if it's still running today, but it's worth exploring, there was a scheme called Adopt a Cop, where a church would find a police officer and say, we'd like to stand with you, we'd like to pray for you, we'd like to meet your family, come to church, at least to meet us now and then, and we'd love to hear from you. What are the issues you're facing? What are the challenges before you? How's your family travelling? To be providing that pastoral care, that enrichment. And that has been such a powerful way of reaching out to the police there in the United States. I'd love to see that being rolled out far and wide, because our task is to help the police to do their God-given role, because if they're to keep the peace, surely they connect with the Prince of Peace. So there's much work for us to do in terms of encouraging those police officers, and as they reach not so much for the taser but for the wisdom and peace of God, hopefully fewer little old ladies will find themselves at the business end of the taser. That's my prayer.